Hi everyone and welcome to Mirmodo's Growth Chat. And I think let's begin with New Year wishes this time. So happy New Year to everybody, and we would really like to know how did you spend your year-end breaks, and how's the work like right now? So how's the work like right now, Dan?
It's good. I'm actually coming back with a bang. I think I had the end of last year. I had a bit of a nice break, so I eased off the year kind of slowly, and now I'm back with like energy, kicking off some big brand messaging strategy projects this week. So yeah, it's good fun.
That's great to know. So, the entire show is also going to about message market fit, but I really wanted to speak about you first. And
Sure.
the first thing that's, yeah, so that the first thing that struck me about you was the fact that you know four languages. You're a fitness freak, and you're like this amazing, like wholehearted person. And then you got into B2B messaging, copywriting. So, we really wanted to know the whole story behind how you found your passion in copywriting and then finally into B2B SaaS. And how did you realize that messaging is something that needs your expertise and maybe that's where you can go and, show your talents. So we'd like to hear it from you.
Yeah, it's quite a linear journey, I guess, my journey into copywriting and messaging. So the reason that I speak so many languages is because I studied languages at university, right? So my kind of academic background was modern languages. I was a linguist. I worked in the translation
Oh,
industry primarily for a number of years, and absolutely loved it. And then round about the kind of pandemic, I don't know if anyone else out there is like a pandemic pivoter, but I definitely had a huge pandemic pivot. And I pivoted from
okay.
translation into copy. I had a moment where I lost all my clients. The work had just kind of
Oh,
dried out. So I saw it as an opportunity to shift. I've always loved the power of words, I guess, the power of communication, the power that we have to
right, right,
actually
right.
connect with other people through our words, to actually shape them, to persuade. And really, it was quite a simple journey for me to then get involved in copywriting and brand messaging. And then, yeah, the evolution has been quite simple, really. I was working with a lot of companies and founders and marketing teams on their copy. And
Right.
when it came to understanding like their whole messaging strategy. So, what are you all about? What makes you different? What is your positioning in the market? All of this key foundational stuff that you need to know to write great copy. I found that a lot of companies really struggled with that. And so that's where this
Right.
kind of this last pivot, and that's like led me to where we are today, and to really focusing on messaging strategy, which is like my sole focus right now.
So, Dan, like you just said, you realize that it's the messaging that most people struggle with. They really don't know if they're able to communicate their message to the people, and that's where you decided. That's where you realized that you could use your talents there. But if you had to define like message market fit to people who don't really, who are not aware of the term, how would you do it? How would you define message market fit for the people?
Yeah, that's a great it's a great starting point. And actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to go one step further. I think before we even talk about message market fit, let's talk about messaging in general, right?
Yeah.
Because
Right.
sometimes there's like this elephant in the room that we confuse messaging with copywriting. So what is messaging anyway? So the way that I define messaging itself is like what you say about your product, your service, your solution. And then copywriting is really kind of like how you say that, right? So a
Right.
company's messaging is the foundation for really strong, effective copywriting, and it's based on and informed by your unique positioning in the market, right? Your mission, your values, the value that you
Hmm.
provide to your customers. So messaging itself is really all about like identifying the most essential things about your product and why that matters to your audience. Once you have that core messaging, it can be kind of told in different ways. So now when we know what messaging is, so if we think about like message market fit, we think about the market. If you just think about like the current business landscape right now, positioning and messaging, it's a battle, right? Like every single company is fighting against so much noise. Like there's never been more brands and companies than there are today. You've got so many competitors, not just actual competitors, but competition of like, well, I don't know which product to choose, so maybe I'll do nothing. So really messaging and having message market fit is like how you cut through that noise. It's making sure that your product, you're talking about your product in the right way that actually connects with your customers. I mean, I work in the B2B and tech and SaaS space, and there's a lot of talk in the beginning of finding your product market fit, like finding the right product for the market. You're solving a problem, surely that should be good enough, right? Like the product will sell itself. We have this cool product, everyone will want it. But then if you're not talking about your product or your offering in the right way that will connect with your customers, that's where you won't break through. So that's why message market fit is so important. It can be called many different things, but that's my definition.
Yeah, exactly. So, like you said, many people think, we've got this amazing product and it'll sell itself. And usually that does not happen. And because of that thought process that they already have in their mind, they tend to commit certain mistakes. And there was certain, like you mentioned, that there will be some things, like certain things that you will be talking about, which are like major no when it comes to messaging. So could you like just talk about certain major messaging mistakes that people do and how one can avoid them in 2023?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm trying to think. There are obviously so many messaging no-nos, but maybe we can start with like three key messaging mistakes to really try to avoid like this year, 2023, seeing as it's the beginning of the year, it's January. So I would say the biggest mistake that I see going forward is trying to speak to everyone. Right? So really going too big, going too broad with your messaging. You might have heard this phrase, like if you try to speak to everyone, then you end up speaking to no one, right? The examples of this is the classic message.
I agree. Yeah.
It's the classic message that you'll see with we are the tool for executives, for managers, directors, marketers, and it's just saying you're for everyone, right? So that's like a one-way ticket to just being completely like obsolete. You have to remember that we're trying to break through a lot of the noise in the market. People have a lot of options today, like in marketing tech alone, there are like 9,000 tools that are competing for your attention. So if you speak to everyone, this means you're not going to be able to get very specific in your message. And if you can't get specific, you cannot connect on a deeper level with your customers. So what that's going to do is that's going to lead to vague messaging, unmemorable messaging, irrelevant messaging, which is really not what you want to do. You're going to risk really sounding like everyone else. Just as one example, I'm not going to name and shame, but there's definitely a competitor of yours, and an email service provider. I went onto their website not so long ago, and I found a headline that just said like email for everyone on the homepage. Like this is a classic case of trying to speak to everyone. When I land on there, I'm a founder, I'm a marketer, I work in a particular type of niche. I have a certain type of client. I have a need for email. If I land there, email for everyone, that doesn't tell me anything about your value, how you can help me specifically, and what makes you different. So I would definitely say for like number one, to kick that off, that's the number one kind of big mistake. I'm going to pause here before we move on to like 2 and 3, just in case there was any comments or any follow-up questions from you.
So any questions from the audience? You can like comment and I'd share it.
I think this is the beauty of going live, but Sabahat, I'm getting a little bit of like feedback from your line as well. So I don't know, maybe we can see.
The internet?
I'm getting a bit of like background noise coming through.
Oh, yeah, okay. Just give me a moment.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean,
So,
definitely this is the biggest mistake, I would say, to kind of,
huh,
it's going to really just mess up your messaging, right? Trying to speak to everyone, not getting super focused on your audience. Actually, just to
right.
kind of close that point, there's another example of a client that I worked with last year or 2 years ago, actually, a client of mine, a sort of a multi-million-dollar SaaS company, who told me that their target audience was anyone who used Microsoft 365, right? That was it. So that's like 2.2 million businesses. So tech companies, legal companies, financial companies. There's no way that you can create targeted messaging that really resonates when you're focusing on an audience group that big. So yeah, this is like the huge number one no, trying to speak to everyone. And you'll be surprised there are still a lot of companies that seem to be very scared of niching down in their messaging and narrowing down their message. So that's definitely number one. Um, I would say number two in the sort of big messaging mistake is really focusing on the product completely, only focusing on the product and forgetting about your customer at all. Um, Again, my example of within the kind of B2B and tech space, there's a lot of this, unfortunately, that happens, although across B2C sometimes as well. But it's very easy within your messaging to talk about your product. Just that, just to talk about the product, the features, it's the fastest, this is what it is, this is what it does, forgetting to translate that into why does that matter for your customers. um, Remember that your customers do not care about you at all. Like your customers care about themselves. They care about their
Right.
needs, their desires. They care about solving their pains and their struggles. And so in your messaging, you need to focus on showing that transformation for your customers, not just this is what our product is and does, but what does that mean for you? How's that going to benefit your life? What can you do with that? What's the big picture outcome and the big picture benefit going to be for you? Um, Particularly in the world of messaging and copy, sometimes there is a conversation around features versus benefits, right? This comes up quite a lot. Marketers often have to weigh up, like, what should I focus on? And I always say it's not about features and no benefits, and it's not about just talking about the benefits and not the features. It's about how do you marry those together and show the value of your product for your customer. So here's this feature, here's this thing, and here's how this helps you. I'd say that that's one of the second biggest mistake for clients and businesses to really look out for is, does your messaging focus way too much on your product and not enough about the value for your customer?
Right. So I think those were some amazing tips that you've just now given. Could you like think of an example? Maybe like you've given us many more examples, but like for example, there was a messaging mistake that you fixed, and you could see the results right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's hard to think actually of a specific example that I've worked on recently, but I think, and I realized I said I was going to talk about three examples, and I only talked about two. So probably the third one is maybe where I can give you a specific example. But the third one, really, I would say to a messaging mistake to avoid is kind of fluffy, jargon-filled messaging, right? This happens
Right.
a lot in the kind of B2B space, often a symptom of focusing more on the kind of rational, logical side of things more than the emotional needs of your customers, right? So,
Right.
for example, messaging that is very fluffy often talks about a couple of the key high-level rational needs that we all have for products, which is save time or save money or make money or reduce effort, but not really getting more into that and forgetting the emotional needs behind that. So often that leads to messaging that is uses a lot of buzzwords and jargon like accelerate your revenue or transform something or facilitate XYZ, but it doesn't say much else. So recently, I think, so the end of last year, I worked with a customer insights platform, like a B2B SaaS company. When we started the work together, actually, if we on their homepage hero, I can't remember the exact message or the headline that it was, but firstly, it was a rolling like carousel that changed the words like every couple of seconds, which is a prime example of trying to say too much, trying to say too many messages that you can't pick one message, right? It's trying to talk to a huge audience. Often this is a huge symptom of that when you have this like sliding carousel of words. So firstly, this was one of the biggest things that we wanted to get rid of and just go and so focus solely on one message. They also had a kind of short to snappy headline that, something like, it was like prioritize and prioritize and organize your insights. Let's say, for example, it wasn't the exact title, but very high level, very rational, not very emotional. It didn't really tell me like what this was about. After all of our kind of messaging strategy engagement, working on this together with the team, validating messaging with the customers and with their clients, one of the key things that came up was that one of the key needs here isn't just organizing your user insights, but if you ask, why are you doing that? What is the real need behind this tool? Like, why are we trying to gather customer insights in the first place? Well, it's to build a better product, right? So product developers need to build a better product in the end, and they want to build an awesome, cool product that their customers love. And so actually we've tested changing and shifting some of the messaging and leaning on one of the new messaging pillars, which is like build a product that your customers love. And that's a new headline that then they've tested and seen great results with. So I think that's the perfect example of stepping away from trying to speak to everyone, using these cool jazzy words that are actually very vague, buzz-filled, don't say much about your solution, very rational because that's what you think people want to hear, and then changing that into something that is a little bit more emotion-filled, but it's very specific and speaks to the needs of your customers.
Right. So thank you so much for that, Diane. And now we are like, finally to your secret framework that everybody really wants to know and that has helped you fix messaging for so many of your clients. So if you could just talk about it a bit.
Yeah, of course, definitely. So the way that I approach really any kind of messaging strategy or even copywriting engagement is I have a kind of very simple 4-step process, a framework that I follow to work with my clients on that. I call it the RAW framework. My company is Lion Words, so I like a lot of lion related imagery and words. So it's the ROAR framework. So practically what that looks like is the first step is research and discovery. The second step is opportunity and strategy. The third step is assembling, so assemble and execute that strategy. And then the final step is review and validation. So really with research and discovery, that's breaking down and really investigating what is the ecosystem of the company, what is the competitive landscape. The opportunity is looking what opportunity is there in the market, what are we missing out on, what are we not saying, what should we be saying, and also testing that with your customers. And then assembling, it's funny because I never think about writing a strategy. I don't think we ever write. I think we assemble those pieces. So I often think that we kind of put those pieces together, right? From research and discovery and speaking to our customers, we get all of the pieces that we need and we put them together. And then the final step is review. And so I work with my clients to review and validate that messaging, not only internally, but externally. So that's really like the high level framework. Obviously, it's a lot more complex than that, but it's a very easy kind of 4-step process that anyone can kind of break down and do that themselves. in terms of what that actually looks like kind of practically in that process, I kind of want to break down a couple of pieces of that a little bit further. So when it comes to working on building your messaging strategy or this for yourself or for your own company, there are two big pieces that we want to look at with your brand and your company. And I like to think of those as like the internal and the external. Internal, I always want to start with the story and the vision, right? It might sound kind of fluffy, but some of the companies that will come to mind immediately when I say name a company with great brand messaging, a company that resonated with you, the companies with engaged customers, with raving fans, right, with brand advocates, those are the ones with a strong vision and a strong story, a strong narrative. In the consumer space, we can all think of a couple of the big brands. I'm not going to give them any more airtime. But for example, in the tech space, we can think of, companies like Basecamp, for example, that come to mind that have these kind of diehard followers. So, it's kind of cheesy thinking about your story and your narrative, but, people don't just do business with you for the product, but often for what you believe in for that story. So you really want to start looking internally and start with the story, with the vision, and work out what you can own, what you want to be known for, what you can stand for internally. So getting clear in the beginning on those purpose, vision, values, building out a clear story, defining a clear strategic narrative, a clear point of view, and really kind of clarifying as well what makes you different as a company, really what is that unique kind of value proposition that you hold. And all of this work, we start in that first step, right, in research and discovery. And then that's the kind of internal piece. And then I would say that we also have that external piece, right? And that external piece is, okay, so this is what we think we're all about. This is what we want to project. This is what we have discussed and found that is our unique differentiation. But then going internally, all right, now let's validate that with the market. Let's validate that with our customers, and let's validate our positioning with like what people are actually doing. What are they saying? And what are the opportunities that we kind of can jump on as well? Because we also want to make sure that we're not building that exact same story as everyone around us. Your differentiation and your kind of like onlyness, right? Onlyness was something that, Martin Uma came up with, but it's a framework that I use a lot with my clients. What makes you different is not just one particular feature. It's just not one piece, it's layering on. Okay, but for this one group of clients who have this one particular need in this brand category, what is the thing that you do differently to everyone else that you can deliver for them? And that you're going to need external validation from your customers and from your market. So I do a huge piece of work with my clients on researching, interviewing customers, understanding how they speak about the product, and then validating that with like our idea of what we're saying right now, and is it aligned with what our customers are saying? And then that we take to the final stage when we kind of align the two and make sure that what we're saying is aligned with what our customers are saying, so that it will actually resonate. I think you might be muted. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Yes. We've always got to have one mute at some point with a live session. I think we might be having some tech issues. I'm not sure. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. Can't hear Sabed. Okay, so I think hopefully if you guys can still hear me, then I'm going to keep going. I'm not sure if Sabah is having a bit of an issue, but this is it's always the issue with you with going live, right? There's always something with tech.
I think I must be audible now.
Yes, you are. Hey.
Actually, it's the internet, and it's taking a bit of a time to mute and unmute myself, and that's why there was so
Mm-hmm.
much of a lag. I'm really sorry about that.
No worries at all.
Yeah. So, Dan, as I was saying, okay, maybe you didn't hear what I said. Basically, I was saying that, you've spoken so much about your framework and it must be so much beneficial for our audience. And like you said, copy is one of the most important part of the entire positioning strategy, and that is where messaging comes in. So, do you have
Mm-hmm.
some tips, like some small tips for our audience that they can use to level up their copy when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to messaging specifically?
Yeah, definitely. I guess I think the probably my tips, let me think about this, will be to let me try and keep this simple, because I think this is like a lot of information to take in, and I think the successful copy um, will look different depending on each company, each
Yeah.
audience, the goals. So it's important to remember there are a couple of things that really great and successful copy will always have in common. Number one is that it is super clear, right? And this goes back to everything that I've just been explaining about what bad messaging is like. Great messaging focuses on clarity over everything. Um, if everyone went headed to their homepage, headed to their website or to whatever marketing materials, and just did a quick gut check, like a 5 second test, which is what I do, which is like reading through and saying, asking the question, is this clear? Is it clear what I do, who for, and why this person should care? Like that test would change a lot of the messaging and a lot of the copy on websites out there. Like a telltale sign, if your copy isn't clear, is perhaps that prospects and customers don't really get what you do. And this is quite common in across kind of B2B, across marketing, martech. So definitely number one tip is really going back and editing for clarity as well. So when working on copy, put your messaging out there, follow the framework, say what you need to say, create this hierarchy of messages, but then before going and hitting publish, go back and just making sure, like, is this as clear as it needs to be? If there is any doubt, then edit it. Um, the the second thing, and I think this links back as well to uh, what I was mentioning about messaging having too many too many messages, is making sure that your copy is easy to understand and very focused on one thing. That you're not trying to say too much within one sentence, within one phrase, or within one headline. Right? Often a telltale sign that you're not doing this, again, is also if your prospects are a bit confused. There's this kind of law in psychology called Miller's law, which is that people can't retain more than like 7 things at any one time. Often you'll see in headlines, sometimes companies love to use like 3 snappy words, right? So prioritize, send, share. And then in the subheadline, there's like another 5 different actions that you can do with this tool. I can only remember a few things, and I have one question, which is, what do you do? This is not easy to understand. The more things that you're trying to say in small blocks make it really hard for the reader and for your customer to understand and to walk away and remember that one thing or the 2 things or the key things that you can help them with. So focusing on making your copy really easy to understand by focusing on just key messages and keeping your copy very specific within one headline and within one subheadline, I think is my second tip. And I guess the third element of really great copy, again, is that it's relevant and created around the needs of your audience, right? Based on research. You can tell when copy gives you that aha moment. Often, like, we talk about KPIs and we talk about the goals that we want for our copy. Okay, yeah, we want a conversion lift and we want X number of signups. But before any action, you actually just want your prospect or your reader to have this aha moment, which is like, aha, I get it. Like, this is me. I feel seen. You're really talking about my pain. And so making sure that your copy is relevant, that is based on the actual needs of your customers. And a great way of doing that is actually using some of your customers' words and your customers' language in your copy. That's where actually going out and doing customer research and speaking to your customers, surveying your customers, looking at your customer reviews and looking at the language that's used there. That's where all of that work then comes into play, where you can put some of that language into your marketing messaging so that it will resonate even more with your customers and with your future prospects.
Right. So I think we have the last question that I really wanted to ask you, which is basically, how do you think emails can help any organization put their message forward to their audience? How can they play a role?
Yeah, this is a great question, because email marketing and emails in general provide a really unique opportunity for messaging, unlike any other channel, because in an email you have the opportunity to really speak to one person, to one user, right? You have this one-to-one interaction. Even if you're emailing a list, you have 100,000 subscribers, it doesn't matter, because in that one moment, there's one email that's addressed to me and it's in my inbox. Now, other channels, whether that's ads or whether that's your website copy, we're trying to actually follow the rules of email, which is, with copy is a conversation, right, between you and the reader. That's it. It's the same as like a conversation in person. But when you're writing on a website, you're always trying to remember that you're writing to one person, because it's very hard to imagine. Whereas with an email, you have this one-to-one opportunity to really focus, to really get very specific. And it's a lot easier to not make those mistakes that I have mentioned earlier. Really focus on having a personalized message and speaking directly to your user. And really, I guess, taking the messaging strategy that you have, or that key message that you want to share with your customers, and taking it kind of one step further, I guess. So yeah, I mean, for me, I think that's the real key with email, is taking your messaging strategy and taking that personalization like one step further.